when you look at Steve Smith, again, what I don't like, I respect his comments. Let me first say this. I respect his comment, Skip, because it's feeding off of what we talked about yesterday. If you want to let him go, let him go. Now, I'm going to read this quote so America can hear this from Dave Gettleman, the GM for the Carolina Panthers. He says, when I took this position, I knew that difficult decisions would have to be made along the way. To move on from a storied veteran player is probably the most difficult of all, a decision not to be taken lightly. However, after much thought, I feel very strongly it's the right one. As I've stated many times, all decisions I make will be in the long-term best interest of the Carolina Panthers. Decisions, either popular or unpopular, have to be made for the greater good, and it is imperative to take an unemotional global view. I have no problem with that quote whatsoever. Totally respect it. My problem is, why did a different quote leak out about the character of Steve Smith along the way?
Distraction.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
That was unfair to him. You want to move on? That quote right there says
I think
all.
he just said that quote. I don't think it was a leak, was it?
Oh, yeah,
Didn't he just say it to the Charlotte Observer? I might be wrong about that.
He just happened to talk about the
My problem was that. My problem is not what I just read here.
Right. Yeah.
Because I respect that. Steve Smith's been with the franchise for 13 years. He's on the record in this story, printed right on ESPN.com, acknowledging and admitting that he is no longer a #1 receiver. We get it.
Yep.
We understand it. He understands it. They understand it. Just don't sully his name. And I think when you talk about, blood and guts and what have you, he's talking about how you tried to put this out there about me to hurt my market value so you could justify letting me go. When all you had to do was sit there and say, this is in the long-term best interest of the franchise.
It's true.
He's going to clear cap space. He's not a #1 receiver anymore. We've got young dudes that we want to give the locker room to. And you know what? It's kind of difficult to do when you've got veterans here for the last decade who have that level of influence. Nobody would have said a word about it. So I get where Steve Smith is coming from with that level of animosity. Having said all of that, Carolina's defense is not their GM. Carolina's defense knows what blood and guts is all about. And as much as they love and respect Steve Smith,
you're right.
Carolina's defense is not going to just sit back and let you do what you want, when you want, how you want, to whomever you please, if and when the event arrives that it's time for you to go up against them. This is an elite defense in the NFL. You're not pushing them around. But I will say this. I like the thought of him going to Baltimore. That would be a tremendous. Him with Torrey Smith, Jacoby Jones, and those boys. Flacco having another weapon to throw to, not sitting there and looking like he's ready to tank the season just because Peter's gone and he goes down, your tight end.
But they just resigned Peter for a lot of money.
They just resigned Peter. But I'm just saying when he went down.
I know.
When he went down. When he went down, Flacco looked lost for about half the season. But with Steve Smith there, if he would have come there, I like the addition of him instead of him going elsewhere.
Okay. You like it how? As a fourth receiver in Baltimore? Because to me, that's how he shapes up, as the fourth receiver on that roster.
Well, listen, right? You know why? Well, look at Denver and what they're doing with the four weapons they had last year. I'm looking at it from the standpoint that first of all, I didn't trust what I saw from Ray Rice on the field, all right, averaging less than 2 yards a carry.
This is a whole nother issue.
But no, I'm saying on the field. But now that he's got into trouble off the field, I'm very concerned about the future of Ray Rice. And I think that the Ravens are going to find themselves in a position where they're going to have to throw the ball considerably more than they're accustomed to. And as a result, I think having four won't hurt you.
All right, that's fine. But back to your original point, I do not believe that the Carolina defense will lose any sleep about how Steve Smith is going to return to wreak revenge on them, because I don't think he will. Points of order. Over the last 3 seasons, Steve Smith's catches, yards, declined. And Stephen A. Smith, I'm about to make my first Charles Barkley reference on this show. Charles has often ripped me on his shows that he does, and I'm going to applaud him for something he said on TNT at halftime last night of the first game that they televised. Charles Barkley made a profound statement about getting old. It was in the context of a guy you love, Kobe Bryant. And he said, you have to accept the fact, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, that Kobe Bryant is getting old. That's true. You do have to. Kobe is going to have to accept that at some point pretty soon. And Charles made the point that the reason Shaquille and Kenny and Charles are all sitting up there on that set is because they all got old and they're hanging on to their connection to basketball because they couldn't play it anymore. Back to our point here, Steve Smith is just right before your very eyes getting old at age 35. He's a smallish receiver at about 5'9", 185 yards, plays his guts out every Sunday, plays his big heart out, gave that franchise every ounce of his being for all those years. And for a while, as you remember, we talked about this, 05, 6, 7 in there. He might have been the best receiver, at least the most dangerous threat in all of pro football. But he's getting old. And the man you heard yesterday about put on your goggles because blood and guts are going to be spilled in your stadium is fighting Father Time. He's fighting that internal battle of, I got to say this because I know I'm starting to lose it a little bit. I'm getting old. But I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to be the most in-shape 35-year-old you have ever seen. And will that be enough? Will that really put Baltimore over the top next year? I don't think so, because I didn't see enough from Steve Smith last year. Cam Newton is starting to enter the prime of his career. He needs a better weapon than Steve Smith was for him last year. Not good enough.
That's fine, Skip. But I'm going to read this to you. I am no longer a number one wide receiver, and I know that. And I've been knowing that, and I don't have a problem with that. Those are from the words of Steve Smith himself. Steve Smith is not claiming to be a number one receiver. He's not claiming to be a primary target. What he's saying, first of all, everybody's fighting Father Time. Everybody, including me and you.